The head of the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees has blamed the so-called US-Israeli Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, or the GHF, for the deepening famine in the besieged territory. In a social media post, Philippe Lazzarini described the existing famine in Gaza as man-made. He said the rising level of hunger is a direct result of replacing the UN-coordinated humanitarian system with a politically motivated GHF. He noted that the US-Israeli aid system is so far responsible for the killing of nearly 1,400 starving people in Gaza. Lazzarini said since UNRWA was sidelined by Israel 5 months ago, famine has been deepening in Gaza. He added that weakening UNRWA was a deliberate measure to collectively pressure and punish Palestinians for living in Gaza. Warning that no time should be wasted anymore, Lazzarini called for unconditional opening of Gaza's crossing to allow in aid. Now to talk more on this, let's cross over to Bristol, the UK, where we have Tony Gosling with us, historian and investigative journalist. Mr. Gosling, good to see you again. Mr. Gosling, your thoughts on even the United Nations condemning Israel's starvation tactic and its death trap for aid seekers. And also, Mr. Gosling, now people understand why the regime was so adamant on dismantling UNRWA, getting rid of probably the only lifeline in Gaza, the only lifeline that the Gazans had.
Well, Ben Gvir, the security minister in Israel, was on the record as saying that the Palestinians must get out, or else if they don't get out, then they can die. So this is the sort of attitude we've got from the Israeli government. Everyone should be able to see this. This Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, Donald Trump seems to think that they should give it more money. It's all working rather well. Okay, so 1,400 people roughly have been killed while trying to get aid there in these kind of rat trap situation that they've created. But of course, many, many more have either been injured or are dying of starvation. So the other side of the American attitude to Gaza is Steve Witkoff, who's been over in chatting with Netanyahu, and apparently he's been telling the Western world that Hamas are prepared to lay down their arms. Now, he's a liar. This isn't the truth at all. And so the Americans are playing with the world public, and in fact I think it's quite fair to say that Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, people in Gaza itself are saying that they're getting virtually no information from them at all about what safe procedures might be to get food. So you end up with a kind of scrum type situation, people having to stand in cattle-like barriers in order to get aid. And so the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, it seems, is simply aimed at the European and United States public, the Western public. The idea is that they will do statements to the press, they will have their side of events put out by the Israelis and the United States, but actually this is really just a takeover of the UN aid forces. And of course, whilst we've been talking about things like potential ceasefire agreements, recognition of Palestine, etc., still people are starving because of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, a rather misnamed organization. And I think it's important we understand, what is Netanyahu really up to? I'll put this theory to you, that he is there to create as much chaos as he possibly can. Anybody that tries to negotiate with either he or the United States are fools, because they have no intention of honouring any negotiations. In fact, they possibly will use information gained about individuals in negotiations to track them, follow people they meet, and then assassinate those people. And that's the cynicism of Netanyahu. He is the great king of chaos, and his role, I think, is rather a Hitlerian role, in that if you listen to and read the British wartime writer and deception planner, brilliant man and fantastic writer Dennis Wheatley, he suggested that Hitler, back in the Second World War, was a prototype for the Antichrist, for things to come in the future, and for Armageddon. And now a lot of people talking about Armageddon. So the point is here, Netanyahu, it seems to me, is creating as much chaos in the Holy Land as he possibly can to provide a red carpet for an Antichrist, a real biblical Antichrist, a sort of messianic figure, to turn up on the scene and say, it's all okay, I'm going to sort it all out. But that, it seems to me, is the plan, and that is why it's very difficult, if not impossible, to negotiate with such maniacs.
Mr. Gosling, talking about humanity, one would think that there must be some red lines, but it seems that the Israeli regime has none. How can an entire population of 2 million plus be under siege, be starved to death, with proof clearly seen in the videos coming out of Gaza, and the international community just sits and watches on, especially the neighboring Arab and Muslim countries, and worst of all, some are even helping the IOF?
Well, I mean, it's fair to say that some countries have been dropping aid in a small amount, but the answer to your question is very clear. They have deep state support within the West for everything they're doing. In fact, within the Western media too. They have those journalists covering, in fact, particularly through Rupert Murdoch's News Corp empire, and other pro-Zionist, many pro-Zionist private media corporations in the West. What they're doing is they're, for example, over the last few days, we keep hearing about recognizing Palestine, blah, blah, blah. So everyone's supposed to forget about the starving and the starvation, the lack of aid, the lack of food. Netanyahu provides a few lies about there being no starvation, blaming Hamas for the starvation when really it's his fault. And so you can see this is a way to just simply bamboozle. And in fact, the idea is to aim this at ordinary people in the West who are uncomfortable, obviously, when they see the pictures of starving children and children being deliberately starved. And so that's actually what they're doing, is they're diverting everyone's attention away from that towards a false agenda and a fake agenda, which actually at the moment, it's completely unrealistic to expect a Palestinian state solution. There has to be food going to people, and there has to be, quite obviously, a viable ceasefire, and with the Israelis actually retreating and moving out of Gaza. So that obviously must come, it seems to me very obvious to anyone around the world, particularly the United Nations, must come with a neutral peacekeeping force to keep the Israelis out, and also, if necessary, a no-fly zone over Gaza in order to shoot down, if necessary, any Israeli bombers that are trying to bomb further civilians and kill further civilians, or prevent aid shipments. So there's lots and lots to do against the Israeli state at the moment, and it seems to me that feeding the people is absolutely, should be, number one, top priority, when all we're getting across the Western media is a whole bunch of talking heads talking about nothing.
There you have it. As always, Mr. Tony Gosling, historian and investigative journalist, joining us from Bristol, UK. Mr. Gosling, it's always a pleasure having you on the program. Thank you, sir.